Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. We've got a podcast video, perfectly normal one. Just once again we've got a lighting issue. I just can't seem to get my life together in some ways. It's already a few days after I filmed my German video. Because after I finished that one, I was like, I'm exhausted. I'm not going to have the energy to just film the English one straight away. So I was like, oh, it's okay. I'll do it tomorrow or the day after. And then days went by. And now I can't even remember when I filmed my German video. I think it was almost a week ago. So you are seeing way more progress in this video because of that. It's just life. It's just how it happens. The first thing I do want to talk about, before I get into all the wonderful knitting behind me, is today is actually the 1st of December. So that's how long it took me. That originally when I filmed the German video, I was going to I did in my German one talk about kind of like what my plans are for December and January regarding like this channel. And it ended up not being important, but that doesn't matter. For these like English videos, it is much more important because I know a lot of people in December do Vlogmas and I love watching them. I think it's a really cool thing to be able to see what people are up to. But I had the issue of trying to figure out how I was going to make it work since I do all my videos in English and in German. So I'd have to either do like double the amount of videos or alternate, but then you'd never see like everything. Then I thought about just filming in whatever language I feel like talking and then just putting subtitles for whatever language I'm not talking in. And then as soon as I thought about all of that, I was like, that just dramatically increases the workload. And I've heard from other people Vlogmas is already a lot of work, so then having to like translate what I'm saying, I was like, for so many videos, I was like, I can't do it. It's too much. So instead, what I've decided to do is two separate things spread out a bit more. So for my, I guess you could say German-speaking viewers, but like where I'm talking German, those are going to be videos where I release a video every Sunday of Advent. And then I think I'm probably going to release an extra video on the 24th of December because that's Christmas for me and for a lot of other people in Germany, Austria, and things like that. And so I've kind of planned that out. The first one's already out. So if you're kind of wondering like, oh, will there be an English version? There won't be. You can still watch it. It's just obviously when I'm talking, it's in German. And it's mainly just kind of sort of like a vlog, just kind of sharing some of the things I'm up to, focusing on the things I'm knitting, but they're not very long videos. It's not like a very in-detail view of what I'm up to in a week, but it's just a little bit of, some festive knitting and just festive things like Christmas markets and stuff if I go. And then my plan for English videos is I'm already filming them, but I'm going to be releasing a video for the 12 days of Christmas. So that starts on the 25th and goes all the way to the 5th. Is it the 5th? 5th, the last one? I'd have to count the days. But anyway, for the 12 days of Christmas, I'll be releasing a video every day. So that goes into January, and quite often people kind of do Vlogmas. Some people do it until the end of December, some people do it until Christmas and then they stop. And it just means that the end of December, beginning of January is always kind of like a very quiet time on YouTube. And I know I find that I understand that people need a break, but it's also a bit like, what am I meant to watch? So I thought this could be quite nice. And it's obviously all pre-filmed, but it's kind of a similar thing to what I'm doing for my German Advent videos. but the focus is different. So you do kind of get something different. So in some ways, if you want a full experience of everything that I'm kind of filming over the next 2 months, well, filming this month really, you do kind of need to watch both of them, but you're not really going to miss out. Like, when it comes to the knitting, things will always appear on both channels anyway. But, you know, if you're just kind of interested in having something on in the background, I think both could be quite interesting, even if you don't understand one of the languages. So I wanted to mention that to kind of, in case anyone was wondering about what's happening with videos and why is it that there's this German one that's out and there isn't an English equivalent. That is why. So, sadly, you'll have to wait until the 25th to watch the English series I've got coming up, but I should still be doing, at least after this podcast comes out, I'm hoping I can get out at least one more, if not two, because there's a lot of stuff that I've kind of got that I'm going to be finishing this month, because if you go back a few videos to my knitting plans, there's a few things I want to try and achieve before the end of the year, and yeah, so still lots of knitting to do, which is not a bad thing. But anyway, we'll get into the actual like proper knitting content now, and I do have to start off with, I'm not wearing anything handmade. This is a sweater I think I bought when I first moved to the UK. Can't even remember where it's from, but I've owned it for quite a long time. It is at least 6 years old at this point, and I have worn it so much. It is made of wool. I don't know if it's 100% though. No, it's only 30% wool, 40% viscose, 30% nylon. But there is some wool content, and it's one of my favourite jumpers. So it's striped, and the body is the same thing and has a V-neck, and I just love it. And I felt like wearing this. I was already wearing it, and it was kind of, I wear this a lot, like in autumn, beginning of winter, so it's just comfy. And I've been thinking quite a lot about actually having a look at the kind of like stitches, because it's not just normal stockinette, and potentially recreating it, because eventually this is going to give up on me because I've worn it so much. But let's get into the knitting. I have quite a few finished objects because of the way that I did my last podcast episode of being like a part 2. It meant that I had a lot of time to finish stuff, so I have a lot of finished objects. But I feel like I never film often enough, so it ends up just being that I have way too many finished objects for every video. Let's start with, one of my goals for the end of the year was to finish one of my old projects every month. So old projects for me were literally just anything I'd started before the beginning of this year. So I have projects from 2020, 2021, and that's it. And all of my 2020 projects, I do have to say, I think are now from like the end of 2020, if I'm not mistaken. But the first one I finished, and this is the old project I finished for October, is one I've shown off recently because I started working on it again, hoping to finish it within the month of October, and I did. It was towards the end of October, but either way. And that is the sweater that is sort of known as the basket sweater by Fibre Tales. It is not a pattern that is out. I've said this before. It was a test knit back in sometime last year, I think. Yeah, it had to be last year. I think springtime last year. And there were just a couple of issues with the pattern, and it was just, the test knit got put on hold for various reasons. It's not important why. And I had got to the point of finishing the yoke, splitting the sleeves and body, and stopped because the test knit was put on hold, hoping that it would kind of get started again. Never happened. And then eventually I was just like, I'm sick and tired of having this sitting around. I want to be able to wear it. So I was like, gotta finish it. So it wasn't actually too bad, because with the stripe pattern that you do, and then with this little like colorwork chart, it goes by pretty quickly. That's the beauty of stripes. And I had a few issues with the sleeves. I should have made them a bit longer, but to be honest, it's not too bad. But like, both sleeves are done, and I have actually already worn it once, which was I can't even keep up with what I've said and what I haven't, but my job at the university here in Darmstadt is finished. That finished at the end of October. And from the 1st of November, I started working at a yarn shop just for like a couple of hours a week. It's not a lot of work. And I wore it one time when I was working, and it was the perfect jumper because it wasn't too warm. The shorter sleeves was actually really handy in the yarn shop. So part of me is like, I wish I'd made it longer for general wear, but for like work and when I'm doing things, the sleeve length is perfect. So when it comes to the pattern, I can't really say too much because it's not something you can knit, but if you like the kind of look of it and the colours, you can easily just modify another stripe pattern. So something like Stripes by Andrea Mowry could easily be adapted to look very similar to this. The yarn that I used is Snældan 3-ply, I think it is, in 3 different colours, which was one of the recommended yarns. I think another one was Gilead, but the Rerum Natura, I think was the other one. And it is incredible how this yarn has changed with blocking, because this is washed and blocked now. I've worn it, ends up with an end cut off. It's like, it's a jumper ready for wearing, hence why I've worn it. And the first time I showed off this project in a podcast video, I talked about how different the yarn felt. And it was really hard to explain. And I don't think I'm going to try again. I just recommend potentially going back if you're interested in this yarn, watching that video. But now that it's washed and blocked, it's woolly, but it's very soft, and it really fluffed up a lot. It's incredible. And I'm glad I've got more of this in my stash because I want to knit more of it. It's amazing. I used only one skein of the white because, well, it's not exactly a lot that you need it for. For my main colour, this brown, did I use 4? I think I used 4 100-gram skeins. But still have a decent amount left, and I think even have like a whole skein left and then another half. I do actually have my leftovers, so I'll show that in a second. And I had a little bit of issue with this dark brown. It's coming off black, but it is a very dark brown. I had, I think, 1, maybe 2 skeins. I can't remember, it's been so long. I need to check my emails to see what my order was whenever I ordered this. But I got to about like 2 rows towards the end of this brown stripe with the last skein that I had, and I ran out. So I had like 2 more rows and then the colour work, and that was it. But luckily I'd already bought more of this colour for a different project where I think I'll have extra yarn, so I literally just caked one of those up and used it. It wasn't a lot, it was a couple of grams if that. So I'm glad I had that at home, because otherwise it would have been so frustrating to have to wait and order another skein of yarn. They do come in 50-gram skeins, so I could have just ordered that. But it was just nice just to already have it at home. So that dark brown is already caked up and is sort of tempting me to like cast on the project I have in mind with that one, but I need to finish some things. I was like, maybe in the new year. But yeah, so that's the basket sweater. Oh yeah, I'll show you what yarn I have left over. So this is how much I have left of that kind of white neutral colour. I'm pretty sure I only had 1 skein of this, I'm sure of that. So you can see still plenty of left. And it's definitely enough to still, you know, do something decent with it, which is nice. And then this is how much I have left of the 100-gram skein. The extra one that I had to cake up. So unfortunately, I needed just like a little bit more. And then, like I said, my main colour, I have another whole skein left. And then this, I think, is about like 70 grams or something. So got like a little bit unlucky, but also lucky with that dark brown colour, the fact that I had more of it. So that's the project I finished in October. The next thing I then ended up finishing was the test knit I was working on, which is the Pippin Sweater by the Nepp Girl. I am so in love with this jumper. Not just the pattern, not just the yarn, it's like all of it together just makes me so incredibly happy. So this was a test knit, like I said, that I worked on, and I was a bit worried I struggled to get it done on time because the story just kind of continued on from like the through shadow test knit that I talked about in my last video. Then it kind of, that like stress and struggle fed into the Cosmo Cardigan, and then that stress and struggle fed into this one, and it just kept going. So I was really glad when this was done, because I was like, even though I enjoyed, like by the end of it, all of the patterns were really lovely. I say that mainly for the through shadow socks. You can watch my last video if you're wondering why I'm talking so weirdly about it. But it was just that stress made the other two testing experiences not as fun, because I felt stressed from that previous experience. It wasn't anything to do with the designer of this one or the Cosmo Cardigan. But yeah, finished everything. Decent body, not as long as I normally make it, just because it's a little bit more of a fitted jumper than I have made for quite a while now. I think I have 2 inches of positive ease on this one. And recently I've been going for 4 or more, especially for test knit. So it was just so nice to have something that was a bit more fitted. And it just, as I was trying it on, I had an idea of how long I wanted it to be. And then I was like, I think with the fit, it's going to look weird if it's that long. So that was then nice, the fact that I got to finish a bit sooner. And the sleeves went by quite quickly because you've got like this sand stitch pattern, which is really lovely to work, and decreases. And the only thing I found frustrating, and this is my fault is the wrong word, but because of the yarn that I chose with this pattern, while I think it looks incredible and I'm really happy with how it's turned out, it was a little uncomfortable to knit, because I think the gauge of this jumper is a little bit too tight for the yarn, at least for my hands. So I think I used 3.5mm needles, and it's a DK weight yarn. This is Tinde by Hillesvåg, but a slightly light fingering, because it's like 290 meters, but it blooms a lot, so it's definitely DK, not sport. And yeah, so knitting at that slightly tighter gauge just meant it was a bit rough on my hands. So I think if I could have knitted in a 3.75 or a 4, like a 4 would have been amazing. But I think even a 3.75 would have made it a little bit easier on my hands. But I wouldn't have met gauge then. I chose not to do a folded collar because I felt with this kind of rustic yarn, the folded over collar would be a bit too bulky, it wouldn't sit down. Whereas right now it is, and the fit of it is just beautiful. Anything else I want to say? I don't think so. It's very warm. So I haven't had a chance to wear it just yet, because while it's only recently, like the last few days, that it's gotten really cold, where with my winter jacket, I also need to start thinking about wearing warmer layers underneath. So we're getting to the stage where I can wear this. The problem is wearing something like this at the yarn shop where I work is, as I'm like running around and helping customers, grabbing yarn, restocking things, I do get quite warm, so I'm not sure if this is something I'm going to be able to wear there. If I do, I'll just have to take it off eventually. But yeah, that one is also done and so beautiful, and I really want to make another one. And with the yarn I have left over, I had 6 skeins, I believe. Yeah, it's all on my Ravelry page, but this is how much I've left of my 5th skein. So I used less than 5 skeins. I think it ended up being like 460 grams or something like that. And I stupidly at some point couldn't find my last skein, and I was like, maybe I've already used it. So I caked up the other one I had, and then I found the original one. So now I have this already caked up. So I have like 130-ish grams of yarn left. And I think this colour is just beautiful because it's a bit darker. It has like a darkish grey sort of base, or at least parts of it are darkish grey, and then there's blue over the top. Amazing. Norwegian yarn, I tell you, it's beautiful. So I'd like to try and find a project for this sooner rather than later, because I'm not a huge fan of having caked yarn lying around for too long. These smaller leftovers I'm okay, but a full cake, yeah, I don't like that. I mainly don't like it because depending on how you cake them up, if you are a little bit too like as you're winding, if you hold the yarn as it comes off the swift, and if you're someone who kind of like tugs on it a bit to create a bit more tension, it can cause extra tension in the cake, which isn't good for the yarn, so I just panic. And plus, I'm really still in that whole mood of working through a lot of my scraps and not just having plans for them, but actually like getting through some of them so that when I finish a project with like brand new fresh yarn, I actually have room for those scraps to go somewhere instead of just like shove it in the bag with the rest of the stuff. The next thing I finished is the project for November. And I'm so happy this is done. I still haven't woven in the end. I still haven't blocked it. And this has now been sitting around for like an extra week since I filmed my German video. I struggle as we lose daylight hours. I kind of get really unproductive because I'm like, well, there's only 2 hours where it's actually like daytime. It's me being stupid. I'm working on it. But this is the Novice Cardigan Chunky Edition by Petite Knit. So there's a whole story behind this. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but the red yarn in here is reclaimed from another jumper. It's Feeling Good yarn, and then I held it with a Surrey alpaca by Fyberspates called Cumulus. I also used that alpaca in here and also used Feeling Good, but in a different colour. And last time, I think I had one sleeve done, so I still had the second one to do, which wasn't a problem at all. I had plenty of yarn for that. And I then had to make a decision with the body because I did the sleeves first. And you'll be able to see what I chose already. I had the rest of the body to do. And then I had to figure out with the dark red Feeling Good yarn that I'd used for the ribbing, would I have enough yarn to do the button band and the body ribbing at the bottom? And I calculated how many stitches I had for the body that I'd work, how many rows roughly I'd have to do, and so how many stitches overall I'd have to work. And then I calculated the same thing for the 2 button bands. How many stitches would I roughly be picking up? How many rows would I do? Taking into consideration both sides, and figured out I need less yarn for the button band than for the ribbing at the bottom. And based on the yarn I had left, I had less of this dark red, so I was like, okay, the body just has to be in the same colour as the rest of the body ribbing has to be in the same colour as the rest of the body. Which is fine, like it would have been nice if I could have had this in the dark red as well. But I do think it was more important to have the button band matching, because otherwise it'd be really weird up here, the fact that the neckband and the button band wouldn't match. And the reclaimed yarn, this Feeling Good yarn in this lighter red, completely gone. After finishing the body, I had very little left. I think everything I have attached is actually the yarn I have left. Not that I know where that is anymore. Have I already woven in some ends? But no, apparently that is all I had left. So it really used up every last bit. And I did my kind of trick of figuring out how much yarn do I use in a row, how much will I have to leave for the bind off, and then just kept working until I got really close to the point where I had to bind off. And the yarn I have left over, I have this much left of the Feeling Good yarn in that dark red colour. So it's not a lot, a couple of grams. And I have an almost-ish full skein of the Surrey alpaca left. I have no idea what I'm going to do with this. This is the kind of stuff where I'm like, that can just go in the scrap pile because it requires more thinking than having over 100 grams of yarn left. So it's done. I didn't make it, I think I made it longer than what it said in the pattern. And it's definitely longer than my Pippin. I would have ideally wanted it even longer, so it's past my hips, below my butt, but it's still a decent length, and I'm hoping I'll get a little bit more length out with blocking. But it's not it's short. It's a comfortable kind of cardigan length. It's just what I had in my head. It would have been nice to have it longer, but I didn't have the yarn for it. And I'm just really glad that I used up that red yarn, which is Like, this is the reason I did this project is because of that yarn. I wanted to use it up after I unraveled that project. And I've done that now. And yeah, so this was my November project. My old project that I wanted to finish in November. I actually did finish it at the end of October. And it was like, it was either the 30th or 31st of October. And I only had like the bind off or something to do for the body. Oh no, it was the button band. I had one side of the button band left to do, and I was like, it wouldn't take me very long. It's big needles, like 6mm needles. There's not that many stitches. It doesn't have to be that long. And I was like, no, let's do it on the 1st of November. So I actually finished my November project in November. And then I was like, this is stupid. Why am I holding myself back from finishing things just because I want to be able to say, my November project was finished in November? Who cares? It can still be my November project. I just worked on it a lot quicker and a lot more than I thought I would. So that's my whole project in November. So to meet that goal, I don't care if it doesn't happen, but if I want to meet that goal, I just have to finish an old project in December, and I'll be working on 2, which you will see in the next, I think you'll see both of them in the next podcast, actually. I think that's what I've kind of got planned. Whenever I finish filming a podcast, I then tend to sit down and think about, okay, what projects do I want to try and get done soon? And then what projects do I want to make some progress on? And I start noting them down. It kind of helps me stay a bit focused because, well, I've got a lot of projects on my needles. I have one more finished jumper and then 2 smaller finished objects. So this is where things get a bit interesting about how to refer to it. So if you watched my last episode, you would have heard about the test knit, which I wasn't happy about. And I'm thinking about talking about some of that stuff that's now happened in another video. We'll see. But this was originally based on a pattern. I'm not going to say by who, I just don't want to get into that anymore. But I'm not actually going to call it by the pattern name because I changed it. I had to recalculate the number of stitches for the body, for the sleeve, how to do the raglan increases. I did the sleeve decreases differently. So the only thing that's from the original pattern is the collar. And the first few, like the collar, the split for the number of stitches for the front, back and stuff like that, and the short rows. So it's like this bit to like here is from a pattern and the rest I had to figure out myself. So this is my Raglan jumper. That's how I'm going to refer to it now. And this is done as well. It ended up going quite quickly because it's just a single strand of DK yarn and it's just stockinette. So it was really quick and really easy. And I did have a sleeve finish last time, but I undid it. It was too wide. I went back, took all the ribbing out, and then did one quick decrease round before starting the ribbing again. And it just means it's much more cinched in and how I like it. Like before it was like here, and that was cinched in. So I'm much happier with this. But what I did is actually work the second sleeve first to see if I liked it. And if I did, I was like, I'll rib back the second sleeve, which I then did. And yeah, and the body is done. Obviously, otherwise it's not finished. And I think it's a little bit longer than my Pippin as well, but not like incredibly long, because even though this is relatively oversized, it was then that kind of oversized where I was like, I don't want it to be too long. I think a lot of people who also knit garments will kind of know this delicate balance of it depends on the fit of the jumper and how long it can be, and then it depends on your body type and all this stuff. So I made it the length I wanted it, and I could have made it longer if I wanted, because I have one whole 50-gram skein left and then a third left of another. So 60-70 grams left of yarn, and I started with 500. So I'm actually quite impressed. I was really worried I wouldn't get out a decent sized jumper with 500 grams of DK weight yarn, but I did. And if I'm not mistaken, no, it is. So it's 122 meters per 50 grams. Because I'm trying to figure out whether I can get a jumper out of 500 grams of more like worsted weight yarn, so like 200 meters per 100 grams. Maybe. But yeah, so this one's done. It is one of my make 9s. So that's now another one ticked off. And 2 more my needles and 1 I haven't started and won't be starting or finishing. So we'll just see whether I manage to finish those last 2 or not. And the last 2 things are hats. They're both hats. One of them I actually finished a really long time ago, and I kept meaning to show it off in a podcast video, but I'd filmed a video where I settled on this pattern, and I kind of wanted that video to come out before I show it. Like, originally the plan was eventually show that video and before this is a finished object, and to show this as a work in progress, but I finished it so quickly. So I've just been holding on to it, being like, I'll release that video soon. And I just didn't. But it should be out now. It should have been out before you see this, because I've edited it. I just need to do the thumbnail and release it. But I talked in that video about scrappy projects, specifically focused on like smaller things from the yarn I had left over from 2020 when I did the Cat and Cow. And I had like really small little gumball minis and still had quite a few left after the Cat and Cow, and then was like, what do I do with these? And I did a lot of research and then decided, I was like, as I was making this list of stuff I could do before I found the pattern I then chose to do, I was like, why don't I put this in a video? It can be kind of useful. And it's sort of funny with how I've, like, the timing now of when I've released it, because I filmed it back in the summer. But with Advent, it's sort of relevant for Advent calendars, but it's also relevant for the yarn that you'll have left after your Advent project, because typically projects don't use all of the Advent calendar, like all the yarn. Anyway, this is the sea glass hat, and so it belongs in the sea glass family. There's a sweater, there's a top, and now there's a hat. I think there's only 3. And it's just really simple 1x1 color work. And you can see that I do have these kind of stripes, but to try and make it not too stripy, because this could have been more stripy, trust me, could have been. So you hold 2 yarns together, as in like one contrast color, one main color. And what I then did is, you can see the green stops here. I don't know if you can see that actually, but the green does stop here because the pink starts here, but this blue that's in here is still up here. And what I did when I ran out of the green is my blue, which was my contrast color, became my main color, and the pink became my contrast color. Then when I ran out of the blue, the pink became my main color, and this like light purple became my contrast. So that switching of contrast to main is only relevant if you're aware of color dominance and color work, and if you care. Because it just kind of means that the pink stitches in this section pop more than the pink stitches in this section, because they were my contrast color and I was holding it in my left hand. And so it just has a longer float and it becomes more dominant in color work. And so by switching that up, it kind of helps to alleviate some of the stripiness and the fact that I didn't change both colors at the same time. You can still see it has stripes, but it's just not fully stripy. And at the beginning here, so from here upwards, so everything other than this grey at the bottom is Eden Cottage yarns, which was the yarn for that Cat and Cow, and this grey down here, which is some Arwetta classic that I still had left over. But it was a really lovely pattern. It was so quick and easy to knit, and it was just so nice to use up some of those minis. I still have a load left, but I've got some plans for other ones. But yeah, I can highly recommend this pattern. Plus it's free. Who doesn't love a free pattern? Especially for something like that. And then the last finished object I have to share is another hat that I made, and this is the Firewood Cap. So this is by Lindsay Fowler, and I have the book conveniently here. Because you're resting on my coffee table, I keep a lot of my... I love all my knitting books and knitting magazines, but I tend to keep my current favourites and also seasonally appropriate ones in here. And this comes from the Salt and Timber book by Lindsay Fowler that came out in end of August, I think. And yeah, so that's from this book. And you can see it's just a quite simple 2x2 rib beanie, but what makes it really cute and a bit different is just the fact that you've got these pearl stitch, like this pearl stitch detail. It's not difficult, you just work a couple of rows differently, and it was a really quick knit, and I absolutely loved it. And the yarn that I used was Peruvian Highland wool by Filcolana in the Juicy Green colorway, which I used for my Love Magic Dress test knit. And I talked about, like, I wasn't sure what I was going to do with the leftovers because I had, what was it, one skein and like 98 grams, no, they're 50 gram skeins. So I had roughly like 98 grams left of the yarn because I only used like a little bit of the second 50 gram skein. Well, of one of them, and then I had a full one. And originally the plan was just going to be, it's going to go into my Battenberg blanket. It will just be part of my scrappy blanket. And then I kind of thought, but a hat will be kind of cool. And I know 100 grams of worsted weight yarn, or roughly thereabout, should be more than enough for a hat, especially if it's not like oversized and slouchy, and this isn't. And this is how much yarn I still have left. So I think this is like 20, 25 grams or so. So you do need like almost 100 grams, but I don't think I made the biggest size. I think I made one smaller than the biggest, and I also didn't make it very long because it's intended to be like more like watch cap style, so it doesn't go like too far down. I can't remember if I made it shorter or longer. I might have just made it to pattern actually, but I really love it. And it does actually protect my ears, so my ears end here, so they're perfectly under the double fold, even though this looks kind of like short. But I have the problem with hats with my long hair that as I'm kind of like walking and doing things, especially when I'm wearing a scarf, they ride up at the back and then they kind of pop off. And so I've been kind of more of a fan of these hats that sit further up. But yeah, and I like the fact that it's like this bright green colour. Because I've said this before, my winter jacket is black, and it's nice to have a bit of colour in the winter. So those are all my finished objects. Now please bear in mind, I don't know why this is a thing. I guess I sort of do, but I know that there's quite a few people who feel a bit of pressure when it comes to knitting, and why don't I finish as many things as other people on the internet. And I do have to say, I knit a lot. I knit relatively quickly, and this stuff I've been working on. Like, I didn't update you on any of this stuff in my last episode, so it would have been since the episode before, which was like September, October, I can't even remember. It's been a while, so things do take me a long time. It's just, it all kind of ends up being that by the time I film like a podcast video, there's quite a few things to show. And it doesn't matter how many things you finish. I'd rather do episodes where I don't finish things, I just don't seem to get around to filming them. Let's talk about what I've got on the needles. The first one I have is, technically speaking, a finished object, but it's part of a bigger project. And I shared recently the fact that I have a blanket. I have many blankets, but one of the blankets I'm working on is called the Shieling, and I was working on a square, which I've now actually finished. So the way that this blanket has worked is you make multiple of these squares. You cast on all the stitches, work in the round, and do decreases as you do this colour work. And I think when I showed it to you, I was like on the white, almost up to the purple. So I still had quite a few stitches because you start out with a few decreases and then you do more and decrease quicker and things like that. But I reached a point after, whenever the video was, I think it was for like all the projects I have on my needles. I was like, why have I not finished at least one? Because the first one you're meant to use as your swatch. So I've washed this block, there's all my ends are woven in, and you might be able to see, it's still kind of, yeah, you can see it there. The center part still isn't really lying flat, so I might have to give it another block. Or, realistically, once I finish all the other squares and attach them and it's a blanket, then the weight of the rest of the squares will kind of like weigh it down, and it should be okay. But the colour work is definitely evened out and looks much better. So I finished one. I think you need 30 in total. So I still have a lot left to do. But my gauge is a little bit off. This square came out a bit bigger than it was meant to. I don't mind. I'm happy with how it looks. The yarn has filled out all the gaps. And speaking of the yarn, it's from an Etsy shop called Yarn Home. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Based in Lithuania, I think. And it's New Zealand lamb's wool. And I have a 100-gram skein of all these contrast colours and like a 900-gram, 1 kilo cone, something like that, of this main colour. You are meant to use the different colours, I think, in this garter section. I didn't want to do that. I was like, I'd rather just stick with it kind of plain and then just have the colour work in the kind of middle. Yeah. So I really love this. And I haven't started a second square because I'm kind of planning on when I start as the second square, I don't want it to then sit around for ages. So I want to start it when I'm like, I really feel like doing some colour work, something smallish that will get done relatively quickly, and try and actually get one done quicker than this one. So instead of just immediately casting on the second one, be like, I'll slowly work on it. I want to instead kind of pick a time when I know I can work and focus on it. And hopefully slowly make my way through that blanket. The next project I have mainly been focusing on, other than like one other main one, which is like the last one I think I'm going to show, is a project I talked about just recently, is the Cosmo Cardigan. And last time I showed it to you, I had finished one sleeve, so it's all done. And I was up to like here with the button band, and I have actually finished that now. So the button band is completely done. And I just have the second sleeve left to do. And that was the point when I was gonna film. But then because time has passed and I really want this done before the end of the year, because it's just stupid having one sleeve not done, I have done the second sleeve, the decreases and everything. And I'm literally at the point now where I need to do the cuff, and that's it. So that will be my plan for today. Rest of today, it's already evening time, and hopefully get that cuff done. If not today, then probably not even Friday. I'm working tomorrow. But before the end of the week, this will be done, because the cuff shouldn't take too long. And then it's just weaving in ends where there aren't too many, because the yarn that I used for this project is Plötulopi held single. So I've always felted my ends in. The ends that you can see like up here and things are just when I had to break the yarn. So most of my ends are actually for the buttons. Because it's a double knit button band, you have to like break the yarn, attach new yarn quite often, and I haven't woven in those ends yet. So there's a bit of weaving in, but it's not horrendously bad. So next podcast, this will definitely be done, because I know a cuff isn't going to take me too long. I can literally sit down and watch a movie or listen to something and get that done before I go to bed. So fingers crossed that will be done soon. And the pattern, I should say, this was a test knit back in September, I think it was September. And the pattern is out, so you can make it. And I do kind of always feel like I have to add this disclaimer of there were quite a few changes made to the pattern between when I was testing it and the release. So mine actually looks a bit different, but maybe that's something I'll kind of go into once more when I have finished it and can kind of talk about it and show it off a bit better. That's the Cosmo Cardigan. So that will be something that will be off my needles before the end of the year, because if you've watched my goals for autumn and winter, I believe the video was, I want to try and get to less than 30 projects before the end of the year. And because of gift knitting, I'm currently still at 35. So I've finished a load, but I've had to start I made the choice to start quite a lot more because I'm gifting a lot of things, which was last minute, wasn't my plan. And then, things happened, which I'll talk about another time, not in this one. Then, another old project is, I say old, it's not that old, but I've shown it off before, is the Stardew Valley socks, what I've been calling them, but I think they're actually called fall socks, like the smell of mushrooms. And last time I showed them off, I had just finished these trees and was going to start working the kind of like finished with the sky and the trees, and I was up to the ground. And so you can hopefully, the contrast isn't the best because of the yarn that I chose, but the little sheep. And I have started on the little ducks at the bottom. So once I finish the ducks, then there's one more kind of shorter chart of some kind of bird, I think. Maybe a chicken. And then I'm up to the heel. So this is a project I'd also like to try and finish before the end of the year. There is... Occasionally you do have to knit with 3 colours in a row. That's just the pain of doing colour work with like fun little motifs. I don't mind. I do find it quite fun. It's just, it is a project where I have to focus a lot more because you have to constantly look at the chart. But I'd like to try and finish it because I know the next little, like finishing this chart, I think I have like 2 rows left. And then the next one and the heel won't take very long. And then it's just the leg and the toe. And I'm like, yes, the leg is also the foot is also colour work, but it's fun because you just see these little cute things seeing them come to life. And the yarn I'm using for these socks is literally just like minis and things that I have left over and scraps. So the first 2 blues are Arwetta Classic. Both of these purples, I think, are by the Fibre Fox. The brown maybe too. I have a list of it, and it might be when I finish these socks that I say exactly where each of the yarns are from, but to be honest, it was a great project to look at my mini skeins and my scraps and to use those instead of going out and buying yarn for this, which I originally wanted to do, so I had all the perfect colours, but you don't need the perfect colours, and I think it's better to actually use what we have, if you have it. And I do. Plenty of mini skeins. And then, I think it's only, these 2. And they're both new cast-ons. Now, they're not that new anymore, because like I've said so many times now, it's been a while since I've filmed. But one of the new cast-ons is the Felix Cardigan. And Taylor from Fibre for the People, who has the Wool Needles Hands podcast, it's a lot of different things to remember, has been running a knit-along, which I think is ending mid-December, so I'm not going to finish this in time. That's okay. It was just still fun to kind of use it as an excuse to cast on. But this is how far I am. So I'm making the cardigan, so I'm showing you this side, because otherwise you just see pearl stitches. And the beautiful thing with the Felix cardigan and the jumper as well is there's the eyelets are used for increases, and you get this beautiful detail there. And I've done all the increases. I just need to work a couple more rows so I get the yoke depth that I need for the size that I'm making. And the yarn, because this is the reason I'm making it. The yarn, both of them are by Skein in the Stitch. So Jess asked me if I'd be happy to sample knit. I think I might have even offered, and she was like, that would be amazing. So this is 100% Merino DK. The colour is called Safer Pastures, and you can see I'm almost done with the first skein. Still have plenty more. And that was originally the yarn I was going to use, but then looking at like my gauge swatch, it was so open. I was like, I think we're going to have to add something else. But because I got the yarn at Yorkshire Yarn Fest when I saw Jess, I was like, getting her to send something over is really frustrating with like tax and things like that. It's just frustrating, me being in the EU and her being in the UK. But at Yorkshire Yarn Fest, not Yorkshire Yarn Fest, at Yarndale, I bought some of her Surrey alpaca in the colourway Bone, which is from her new Buffy collection. And I have more than enough to hold it with this. And I swatched with it and sent Jess a picture and said, look, I know this yarn is officially mine, but I'd rather, create a sample piece for you that is actually going to look good and not just try and make it work with the yarn I've got. and mess with the pattern, and then people won't be able to recreate it easily. And I was like, here's how it looks with the suri. If you're happy with me to use it, I'll do it. I really don't mind. And Jess was like, I trust your judgment, which is always a nice thing for a friend to say. And yeah, this is the colour. And I think it just kind of, it obviously mutes down the colour of the Safer Pastures, but I think it's also just going to help with any sort of variation between the skeins. I'm going to alternate soon, actually, now that I'm almost done with that one. But the suri also kind of hides it, and the suri isn't actually undyed. I know it can look like it, especially in the camera, but there are kind of darker patches, lighter patches, more like grey patches. It's a beautiful, beautiful colour. So I'll hopefully be able to split for sleeves soon. This is one of the projects I've been taking with me when I've been going into work at the yarn shop, because it hasn't been that big, but it's starting to get to the point now, especially once I split for sleeves, it's just not going to be manageable on a train anymore. But yes, slowly making some progress on that one. And after that, it's just going to be relatively boring because it's just stockinette. Worked flat until I get to the sleeves, and then it will be easy. And the last project I have to share is pretty much the main one I've been working on for the last 5 weeks from when I filmed the video pretty much. But now it's been an extra week where I've been focusing on other things, hence the Cosmo Cardigan almost has a whole sleeve. But this one isn't actually done yet because I already gave my feedback for this test knit. Did I say it was a test knit? I don't think I did. Let's start with what it is. This is a test knit for Gregoria Fibres, and the pattern is called, I don't know if it's Raffaella or Raffaella Sweater, but you'll see the name. And I do have to say that the yarn was actually gifted. So all the testers received the yarn for free to be able to do the test knit, which I've never had before, so that was quite nice. And the yarn that we're all actually using is, the main yarn is BC Garn Semilla Melange, and Kremke Soul Wool Silky Kid, I think is the other one. That's the mohair. And there was a matching mohair to my, where is my yarn? There was a matching mohair to my BC Garn one, but I wanted a bit of like a mild effect, which is why I went more for like this mustard honey coloured mohair. So yeah, the yarn was gifted to be able to do the test knit, which was incredible. And so you can see it has this high like turtleneck, a really interesting detail around the transition. And it is really oversized. So knitting this in 5 weeks was actually quite a challenge. And I actually ended up having to submit my feedback sooner than 5 weeks. So the designer contacted me saying that pretty much, well, most people, I think she said, had already finished. And I still had like 4 or 5 days left of the test knit. And I kind of panicked. I was like, am I late? And she's like, no. She was just like, if you can finish one sleeve and give me feedback, then she can start working on the pattern and not be as stressed. And I was like, okay. So I had finished one sleeve, and you can see how big and oversized it is, and send her my feedback and everything. And so there hasn't been as much pressure to finish the other sleeve. And I did most of it quite quickly. But then I'm at the point now where I just need to do the cuff, and I'm like, I'll get to it. So that's the plan for the rest of this week. The Cosmo Cardigan cuff, this cuff, and then they're both done. Yeah, so it's oversized. The body might not look that long, but if you see the yoke depth, it's a really long, really oversized jumper. And I did kind of in the feedback state that I think for the bigger sizes, it's not a good idea to just continue increasing every second round. I was like, for the last section, for maybe like this much or something, it might be worth increasing every row just so the yoke isn't as deep, because then it means the sleeves are really big and you can't make the sleeves as long as you normally would, which can be an issue with raising your hands and things like that. But the pattern itself is beautiful, and it's a bit hard to manage in a video because of how big it is, but I'm excited because it's going to be one of those like really cozy jumpers, especially, you know, if you're not really heating indoors, then it can be nice to have something cozy like that. And it's definitely also getting to the point now where, you know, if it's sunny, I can go for a walk and probably be able to wear this without a winter coat because it's getting cold enough. Or if I wear my winter coat, it just won't be clothes. But we're getting to the point where I can wear this outside because it is quite warm with the two yarns combined. Anything else I want to say? So this pattern is, as of filming, it's coming out tomorrow, so the 2nd of December. So by the time you see this video, the pattern will already be out. And speaking of, I need to take a picture, actually. One of those sneaky pictures where I'm like, yeah, finished it, look at this sleeve. It's just stupid that I haven't done that other one, but you know when in your head you're like, oh, the pressure has gone away, and then you're just like, yeah, I'll slowly work on it. That's me with this one right now. But yeah, this evening and maybe a little bit tomorrow if I'm not too tired after work, and over the weekend I'll be able to finish those two. Probably nothing else though. The last thing I want to share is not knitting related, but just something else that I've kind of been working on and I thought it'd be nice to show. So, back in 2020? No, it must have been 2021. I don't think in 2020. Maybe, I don't remember. Some point, 2020, 2021, a friend of mine for my birthday gifted me an embroidery kit. And I've never done embroidery. This is my first time, so be prepared for it not being that pretty. But this is the kit they bought me. So you can see the whale is what I'm going to be embroidering, and it's on a tote bag, which I thought was really cool. So, if you're interested in embroidery, so that was just the details of who makes the kit, so you can buy off of their website. Yeah, I don't think they're on Etsy, I think it's just their website. And I don't have all that much done yet because I just took an evening, started working on it, and haven't had a chance to do it yet. But so you can see just up here, that I started working on the little fin of the whale. And you can see the rest of the design on here because the kit literally included everything. It included the hoop, included the bag, included all the thread, included, obviously, this is just what it will look like at the end. Ooh, it's very shiny. There you go. So that's what it will look like at the end. And like I said, it contains all the thread that you need. I need white and the blue. This is the tracing paper. So you can kind of see the whale embossed in there because I traced the design, which was included. It came with interfacing, because they kind of say once you've finished the embroidery, it's quite good to like iron that on the back side on the inside. So if you use the bag, nothing will like get caught on it and get snagged. Yeah, and then the instructions, the like diagram in color, so you know what colors to do, but you can obviously, you know, make it up yourself. And then a cute little stitching guide, because like I said, I'd never done embroidery. So, you know, when it says like do a backstitch I did actually know already, but a stem stitch and a chain stitch and a lazy daisy and a French knot, I didn't know how to do any of that. So it's a really nice kit, and I have really fallen in love with embroidery just from that like one evening. This took quite a while. It's not the neatest, but it did take quite a while, but I think it's so relaxing and slow like knitting is, but in some ways it feels even slower. Not because like with the progress, but more like with the movements you have to do, and it's just so gentle and relaxed, and I don't know, it makes me feel like I'm in a Jane Austen novel. Especially, I'm like, I would be one of those like young girls or young women, or just, well, should be young, who would get like a slap on the wrist and get told off because the stitches aren't even, and her the thread of her, like the tail of her thread is too long, and I wouldn't have done well. I would have learnt, but currently, based on how I've done, I would have wouldn't have been good. But I'm hoping to kind of learn, but I have told myself, because I'm one of those people who, you know, falls head over heels in love with like a craft or a hobby and then immediately like dives in and is like, give me more, give me more. Now that I really know that about myself, I'm like, okay, I know you love it and you can spend some time looking on like Etsy and other websites to see like what stuff is out there, but I'm not going to be buying anything. No more kits and things like that until I finish this one. So once I finish this one, if there's anything I need for the next embroidery project I want to do, I can buy it, but this has to be done first. And I do have cross-stitch thread at home, and I have plenty of tote bags that I can decorate, because for example, one of my projects is in this tote bag here, which I could totally embroider if I wanted to, either on the design or, you know, something else, and just keep practicing and keep enjoying it, and yeah, make use of what I have instead of immediately being like, oh, I'm missing out and I need to buy these things. I'm like, no, Nina, we have plenty of crafting supplies. We will make it work somehow. So that's it, because I already talked about all the like, well, I guess I didn't talk about like Advent properly, but I think I mentioned it before. I will be working through Georgie's 2021 Advent this year, where I'm making the poet shawl. Got through like 1.5 days last year and that was it. And I finished the 2021 this year, so I want to focus on the 2021. And it also helps that the 2022 one I ordered, I said to Georgie, please don't send it. I have no idea what my situation is going to be like come, you know, December and even November. So I was like, just don't send it. And once I figured everything out and what's happening, you can send it then, or maybe I'll see you before then. And so she's held back on it. And yeah, and I have another Advent from Jess from Skein and the Stitch, and I said the same thing to her. I was like, if they're okay with it, please hold it back, because I don't want them to get lost or, I don't know, just anything horrible to happen to them. And I was like, it gives me a chance to work through my old Advent. And, you know, I don't really remember what a lot of the colours look like. And hopefully I can actually, you know, keep up. And day 1, like I said, I already did last year. I'm on day 2. And today is the 1st. So I might try and work on it a little bit more. So I'm like, I have a little bit of a head start. But if I can't keep up with it, I can't. But it would be nice to be able to finish that, you know, before the end of the year. Or get close enough. But the poet shawl is really big, so uses a lot of the yarn. But I'm hoping I can start on day 3, at least tomorrow, if not today. That is everything. Yeah, so like I said before, you've got what I'm calling the 12 knits of Christmas. Might give you a clue, somewhat of a clue of what those videos might be about. So the first one will go on the 25th, and then you'll get a video every day for that. And hopefully there'll be another podcast coming in December after this one. And then I think it will have to be January time. I'm hoping to be able to make it to Dubai for Christmas to see my parents. But it kind of depends on the hours that I need to work at the yarn shop, so I might not be able to make it, which would be the first Christmas away from my family. But that's okay. It's going to happen eventually. And yeah, I'll just make the most of it. So, thank you very much for watching. And I hope you're all having a good start to, you know, the Advent season. And if you're celebrating, I know not everyone celebrates. But thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!